Hi, this is Rhea Swift.
Hi, Ray. Yeah, welcome. Good to hear your voice. How can we support you?
Thank you. Well, this is my second time on your call, and my good friend Susan Bingham suggested that I join you and have you take me through a sheet, if you would.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Have you been participating in her Mind Shifter support group?
No, but I do work similar to yours for very many years. Yeah. So
awesome.
It's very, yeah, I've done about 3 or 4 of my own worksheets with her prompting, and I've had amazing results. Very excited.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any, from your work with it, do you have any specific requests or questions about the worksheet?
No, just I will learn more by going through it. I've been on your website, and I'm a doer as a learner more than just a listener. So
Right.
I would love to have you take me through one and
okay, let's go for it.
Okay, so where do we start? What do you need from me?
Well, have you got a copy of the current worksheet in front of you?
I believe I do. Hang on one second. Pull it out of my stack of papers here. Yep, I have one in front of me. Okay.
Okay. So you see that the definition of forgiveness is a tool for removing from the mind what never belonged in the mind. And in this work, our recognition is that the mind is the body. There is no separation. They're one and the same. They're just flip sides of the same coin. And if we put a disintegrative quality of mind energy into the structure, then that disintegrative quality of mind energy influences and impacts our cellular structure, our emotional state, our perceptual constructs, everything. And so what we're looking to do with this tool is to remove what interrupts the natural flow or the design of this body-mind unit. And the first question that we ask people when they step into the workshop, why is this happening to me again, is usually, have you ever held a newborn child? Have you ever held a newborn?
I have.
You have. Your own?
No, I don't have any children.
Okay. But you've held a newborn. So if you went back to the moment where you first held that newborn, and you were to tap into the essence of the newborn, what word would you use to describe that newborn?
Bright and light.
And that's totally in harmony with the answers we've gotten from tens of thousands of people over the years asking that question. And what we've noticed is everyone's answer is always some variation on the theme of love. Mm-hmm. And so we offer to people that the essence of that newborn is love. And if you go back to the moment where you held the newborn, you'll notice, or you can ask yourself the question, is the newborn love, or is the newborn loving me?
I would say, oh boy, it feels more like an opening to me. There's an innocence there that just creates an opening and a softening. I don't know if I would use the word love. Maybe I don't understand the word love though.
You wouldn't use the word love to describe the newborn?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I would.
Or what's
yes.
happening for you?
Both. I don't know if that newborn is love. I think that's a colloquialism. It's like a construct that is the definition of it. But to me, it's more innocent and open and accepting, and love. I think loving, but I just don't. That's not what comes to me first.
Okay. Well, after having asked the question of thousands of people over the years, and seeing that pretty much everybody's verbal description is some variation on the theme of love, we invite people to recognize that Love is a state of being, and certainly not something we can describe in words. There aren't enough words in the culture to describe the essence of human life, but it's a descriptor we use to recognize that that's who we are, recognizing that every one of us, every newborn comes in the same way. And so the first step in the worksheet is to acknowledge who you are. And so the invitation is to put your name in that first blank and recognize that your true essential nature is that of love.
Right.
Does that fit for you?
I understand that. Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So then, having described yourself or claimed your true nature, and the idea of forgiveness is to literally remove everything unlike your true nature that has ever been integrated into your structure. Our definition of forgiveness is, as opposed to the culture that tells us that forgiveness is about how I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, forgiveness is the tool with which I go inside myself and remove what never belonged there. And so proclaiming who we are becomes first step. And then the next step is to acknowledge what you're feeling, or what your emotions are. So I'm experiencing, I love and experienced, and the worksheet that you've chosen to do, what's the emotion that's going on for you around that?
For what I'm experiencing myself as, or what I'm feeling now?
No, just what is, when you think about the topic of the worksheet that you're inviting us to support you with,
okay,
emotion moves through you as you tap into that. And that's what you want to put in that second blank.
Okay, I would have to say fear.
Okay. And then you'll see on the worksheet there's the acknowledgement that each emotion literally is a reflection of a different thought, and therefore each emotion, like if someone I'm feeling fear and sadness, they'd be two separate worksheets. So our focus is the fear here, and then our information-wise, I want to put into my understanding that hostility and fear are from internal corrupt data and indicate my use of sustained incoherence to build this disturbing internal construct. So fear, I'd offer, is a construct that doesn't belong in the human structure. And sustained incoherence is a term that was coined by a man named David Bohm. He was a physicist. He was actually a man who worked with, pardon me?
I said I read his books.
Oh, cool. Okay. Cool. So you know who he is. And for anyone who's listening, he worked with Einstein. He was a physicist and did some pretty awesome work. And he speaks about how our own emotional states are a product of our thinking, and that we want to deny what our thinking does to us, and we want that state that our thinking produces to go away. And so he defines that little piece of non-human insanity as sustained incoherence. And our offering, what we've discovered in this work is that whenever the mind is using any form of hostility or fear to produce our perceptual construct, it's using, literally in the mind, corrupt data that will always deceive us. And there's where the power of the worksheet really lies, is that when we get rid of the deception and we plug the mind back into its original power supply, love, then it shifts everything, especially the stored internal energy dynamics of past traumas. When they are brought forward and exposed to the presence of love, they tend to dissolve pretty quickly. And then the next thought in step 1B, mind denial causes my CBM, and CBM we define as carbon-based memory, looking at the fact that every form of hostility or fear that we experience and don't resolve is stored literally in our structure, and recognizing that the base element in the human body is carbon. that carbon-based structure, carbon-based memory is what holds these traumatic memories, and that when we're able to open to those hidden dynamics, those things we've tried to stay away from, and bring them forward in the presence of love, then they dissolve. So it's a fact that we want to blame or think in terms of something outside of us as being the cause of what we're experiencing. So the offering here is that my denial causes my carbon-based memory to displace my experience of myself as my essence love, and tells me the lie that my emotions are caused by whoever my trigger is. So then we go into the story. What's my story? My reality is at number 1C, and you want to fill that first blank in with, what is your object of attention? Is it a person? Is it a situation?
Well, I think initially it's a situation, but that probably comes from a person.
Okay. So then if you would put the name of the person in number 1C, that first blank.
Okay. Okay.
And we'll say his name is Bill. Oh, I don't need to know. We'll just say Bill, just for privacy's sake. So my story, my reality is that 1C, Bill, and then what's the situation? If you were to describe that briefly.
Not being heard.
Okay.
Not being considered as, intelligent, or that I have any thoughts of my own.
Okay. So my offering would be, you just laid out 3 different worksheets. And just a kind of shortcut, seeing as how you've done a couple of worksheets, to recognize that goals are what drive our perceptual constructs. And when we load a goal in the mind, that goal, through resonance, causes the mind to use whatever we've got stored in carbon-based memory to produce our perceptual constructs. So what I hear are potentially several goals there, which would be potentially several different worksheets, and each one would produce a different healing result. So I hear there's probably a goal of wanting Bill to honor you, to see who you really are or perceive who you really are, wanting him to listen to you. So they'd be, we could, probably several others, but just those 3 could easily be 3 separate worksheets. But in this case, we're going to do just one of those. Personally, when I do worksheets, I always have a stack of a dozen or so in my hand. And I start out with one, and I just really pay attention to all the subtle thoughts that come in that cue me into other places where I would benefit from doing some forgiveness. So in this case, pick what would be the most, of the 3 things that you mentioned, what would be the most important core issue that you want to work on today? Is it being honored, being listened to? What would that be?
It would be not
Bill
not
doesn't.
Not being heard.
Not being heard. Okay. Bill doesn't hear me.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, of course, if I'm not being heard, and I have a file, so to speak, the mind organizes information in files, and so I've got a file on being heard, and what that says is that I have some fear stored in the file on not being heard. And so when I load a goal to be heard, it's going to tend to bring that fear into play, and that dissociated fear is going to become a thread in the construct of perception, in the picture that I weave in my mind of, in this case, the character we're calling Bill. So I think, or the average person, and as you say, you've done your work, so you may not be really deeply hooked on that idea, but most people at this stage would be saying, yeah, and Bill really frightens me because he doesn't listen to me, or he doesn't hear me. And you'll see that there's a note there to breathe. Most people at this stage, when they're writing down the situation, because the the underlying energy, they want to keep it hidden. The way to keep it hidden is to hold the breath. And so there's an invitation here to breathe, to just, as you think about Bill not listening to you, allow yourself to just take a couple of deep breaths. And then you'll see after the word breathe in that statement, there's, if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? Now, if Bill is the cause of my fear, why am I the one with the fear? Why isn't it Bill? And the idea here is to build brain cells for moving out of projection and into responsibility for what's moving inside of me. That make sense?
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay. Okay, cool. So then number 1D, the truth is only my thoughts cause my emotional upset. And once again, the reminder to breathe. The thought or thoughts, and you want to do a separate wake-up sheet on each one. You might come up with many different thoughts in this particular regard. As I said earlier, around the emotion. So the thought that I use to cause my emotion of fear, so I'm going to fill in number 1, or look at number 1B. When you're in this man's presence and he's refusing to listen to you, what thought moves through you on a subtle level that causes this fear to move in you? And, you know, go ahead.
Something, I'm not important enough to be heard. Something like that.
Okay.
Not valued. Yeah. Not worthy. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd mark each of those in that blank. I'm not worthy. I'm not valued. I'm not important enough to be heard. And they can each be turned out into a separate worksheet.
Yeah.
And then number 1E, what is it I want to do to punish Bill, our character here? Is there something you'd like to do to, when you get into that fear space? What okay.
I'm going to punch him in the face. That's what I want to do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a big one. All right. So I want to punch him in the face. So aside from the fear, notice that attached to fear, there's a lot of hostility.
Yep.
And your life is probably going to get a whole lot easier when you let go of that hostility.
Mm-hmm.
And hostility is the way that hostility, we see in this work, hostility as a drug. It's a way to anesthetize against feeling what it is that I don't really want to feel. And my feelings are a result of thought disorders I really don't want to look at, kind of back to David Bohm's sustained incoherence. I want to keep thinking this way, he's such a dummy because he doesn't honor me, and now I'm hostile because of what goes along with that experience and fear. And so what we're looking to do is to break down through the layers to recognize that it's my thinking that's creating my fear and hostility. It's not Bill's action or activity. When I clean up my end of the scenario, Bill can ignore me or tell me how stupid I am or tell me how worthless I am, and I'll look at Bill and go, wow, he must really be in a lot of pain, Bill, to be able to say that to somebody else. What a projection. And stand there in a connected space of love within your own skin, letting Bill do what Bill does. Whereas at this point, when Bill can play this game with you, he can really put you into a state, an altered state, probably one you'd rather never visit again. And his action, because it resonates that in you, is the mechanism with which he takes over your mind. And so when I remove the hostility, the anesthetic for my fear, and I confront the core of my fear, and I bring that forward in the presence of love, then my fear and the root of my hostility dissolves, and I'm freed of it. Bill's no longer got any control over me. Whatever he does, I look at him and go, that's interesting. rather than, oh my God, look what you've done to me. So is there a punishment thought towards self? Bill's going to get a punch in the nose. Is there a punishment thought towards self in that circumstance?
I tend to want to hide, just push disappear myself. Yeah.
Disappear. That's a really common one.
Mm-hmm.
So punish myself by disappearing. That'll be a good one to resolve. A lot of people take themselves out of their lives with that one. Mm-hmm. And then you'll see that there's a little hand there, and we introduce the tool of verbal release. Most of what we have learned, from conception onward, has entered into our fields via words. Words become a really key part of the process. And, part of the brain called Broca's area is right next, which is where words are processed, is right next to the emotional center. So our words tend to tie into those emotions pretty deeply. And so what we want to do is introduce the tool, and at first it can seem a little silly, like, oh, well, what's this going to do? But when I realized that I've taken a lot of energetic patterns on through words, then verbal release can be a powerful way to start to eject untoward energies from my structure. And so we're in that box to the right of number 1E. I want to go through a release and surrender to love of each step, number 1A, B, C, D, and E. So I release and surrender myself. I named myself a number 1A. To love, the last line in that box. I release and surrender my emotions of fear to love. I release and surrender Bill, number 1C, to love. I release and surrender my story that I'm not important to love. I release and surrender my thought, the thought that I'm not important, and my punishment, love. And so I'm just going to invite you if you want to do that out loud or just do that internally, just go through each step with that practice.
Yeah, I did it. I did it with you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Then you'll see out of that box, it points off to the right. And one of the things that what we call the non-being mind, carbon-based memory, is it's a habit machine. Whatever is put into it will tend to replicate those habits with no thought or activity by me whatsoever. And one of the things we've noticed over the years that once people get out of a specific circumstance, if they don't cancel the root of the pattern behind that circumstance, then what happens is they'll just turn around and find another situation to play the same scenario out with. And so this step was designed to help to end that pattern. So just to yourself, I cancel my need to be right, i.e. Bill's the turkey that makes me feel this way, or whatever, whatever the thought is. I cancel my need to be right and make up another story out of these brain cells to hallucinate proof that my fear or hostility-based story, my reality, is true. That just be a goal to let go of, if that goal applies. And it usually applies about 110% of the time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And then most people are enamored by the lie. And the lie that most people tell themselves, and the most common lie on the planet, at least that I found in doing this work with people, is the lie that somebody else can cause something to happen inside of me that isn't already there. And so people fall in love with their lie, and when they're in love with their lie, they live in a state that we call blockage of truth. There's some interesting Harvard research that says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells fire, the maximum amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits of data. And I can look at 9 bits of data that prove that they're the problem in my life, but sooner or later I have to acknowledge that I'm the one who's been there every time, and it's about something inside of me. And so by choosing to honor truth, first step here in 2A, I choose to honor truth and willingly face and process out all disease-producing energies for or from all of my relations or generations. So this is an inquiry, If you went back, I could just about guarantee if you talk to mom and dad, and mom and dad's mom and dad on each side, and their parents before them, you would find that one or all of those people had issues with not being listened to.
Yep.
And so there's likely a lot of stored pain literally in your genes around not being listened to, not being honored, not being valued, not, whatever the specific dynamic is. So this step is a step of willingness. I'm willing to face all of it. I'm willing to literally be such a powerful space of love that I can embrace all of that from all of my generations and let that energy flush out through me. So I'll just invite you to take a big breath, and if that makes sense to you, just allow yourself to speak of that willingness. And again, that can be out loud or to yourself, doesn't matter. So I'm willing. And then I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms of healing. What we've discovered is that as energy systems, when we put an energy into the system, it enters the form and it creates symptoms. When we hide it from ourselves, deny, dissociate from it, drink or drug or rage over keeping it hidden from ourselves, then sooner or later we have to reverse that energy flow and move it back out of us. And symptomatically, it's going to be the same on the way out as it was on the way in. So on a physical level, healing looks like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had and low energy. Now, you may do this worksheet and all of a sudden, you become conscious of a sharp pain somewhere in your structure. And you're touching into the energetic dynamic of what that issue is, maybe just in your life or maybe for many generations of your bloodline. And so I'm willing to embrace that. It may look like any kind of negative thought or confusion. As I really start to loosen that energy from its storage system, from carbon-based memory, it can look like any kind of old energy emotionally that I've ever dealt with. And on a mental level, it can look like any kind of negative thought, confusion, emotional negative feeling, and depression. So again, this is just a reminder of that, an invitation to say, yep, okay, I'm willing to process it all. I'm willing to face it, embrace it, and move through all of it. And so if that makes sense, just go ahead and run that thought.
Yeah, I did it while you're talking. Yeah.
Okay, great. So number 3 is to look at what is it in this situation that I really want from Bill? What's the constructive result? Now, many people go into, well, I just don't want Bill to ever be that ignorant again, that he would ignore me. And that would be what I don't want. Forgiveness doesn't work very well with what we don't want. I want to look at the constructive result that I want in this circumstance. So at this stage, what is it that you would say I really want from Bill?
That I want.
Do I want him? Yeah. Do I want him to recognize me? Do I want him to honor me? Do I want him to really listen to me? What's the real refined crux of the matter?
I want to be heard. I want him to hear me.
Okay. Then that's what I put in that blank in number 3. I want Bill to hear me. My desire, the constructive result, the exact goal that drives my pain's perception is that 1C, my trigger, Bill, hear me. Really hear me. And notice what's happening with your breath. Anything happening with your breath as you write that?
Well, I'm breathing more.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Then in number 4, say again?
I said several automatic breaths as opposed to just one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a great sign of willingness. All right, so then number 4, before I go into the core of the forgiveness process, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I bring love present, because when love is present and I uncover something hidden in me that is rooted in pain, the root of the pain dissolves in the presence of active love. So this step, number 4, is about bringing love present to your own mind. So the request is, I choose love, my essence, which stirs the love in everyone involved. And so what is it that would bring you into the most clear, concise state of love that you can think of, or that you can be in?
My connection with the divine. My connection with the divine. Okay,
perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
So just whatever it takes, whether you do a visualization or you say a prayer or whatever it is that brings you into that connection, go ahead and take a breath and let yourself go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm there.
Then 5A is kind of a review of the whole process and then gets down to the action step. And the action step is the canceling of the goal for Bill to listen to you, to really hear you. And that seems for most people like, well, how silly is that? That's what I want from him. I deserve that. And we offer to people, yes, I agree, you deserve that. And Creator, why haven't you created that yet? And the truth is, there's a part of me that says I can't have it or I don't deserve it. And what I'm looking to do is to uproot that part of me and come face to face with it in this state of connected love. And so recognizing that when I load a goal into my mind recruits information. And if it recruits information from this carbon-based memory system that's based in pain, then I will tend to build a perceptual construct of my object of attention, Bill, as causing me pain. In this case, the fear. So, number 5A, when upset, my perception is built out of corrupt data, driven by my goal. Number 3, the desire for Bill to really listen to me. My perception is a limiting picture constructed from a max of 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing. By canceling my goal, my replicate mind's reality collapses and gives me direct contact with the denied and dissociated parts of my carbon-based memory, which projects and blames others for its content. So here's the action step. Once again, tapping into love while holding love conscious active and present, I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly canceling my goal, the driver for number 1C, Bill, to really listen to me. Does it make sense for you as to why you cancel that goal? Even though it's a very reasonable thing for you to, okay.
No,
so,
I get it. I have a question.
Perfect.
So the word driver,
yes.
That throws me. Yep. What do you mean? What's the driver's Bill?
No.
Is that right?
No.
No. Okay.
In this scenario, a fellow named George Miller, most, referred to research in the history of psychology, he tells us that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the maximum amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. And our offering is that the goal that we hold is a driver that carries that process out. It recruits content from the unconscious mind to build, my perception of whatever my object of attention is. Awesome. So then we want to cancel that goal for Bill to really listen to you and allow yourself to breathe into that. And then there's a power in us that Yeshua taught about 2,000 years ago that was called Ruka Dekudsha. We could call it a super processor. That when we only have this 9-bit mind, this little tiny framework to work within, there's a power in us that can reach right through literally every cell, every level, every generation and move the energy out. So step 5D is about inviting that power to go to work. So I invite, in Aramaic that's Ruka Dekudsha, to incline me toward healing, to restore me to my newborn essence love, to heal my denial and capacity to generate the emotion of fear. Help me open a direct, conscious relationship with and gently remove the denied, dissociated, and projected parts of my carbon-based memory. And
Rhea, welcome back.
Hi, guys.
Hey, young lady.
How are you?
Do you want to go? I am rocking. I'm doing well, and I was delighted with the work we did yesterday. And do you want to do those last couple of steps of the worksheet?
I did them with Susan, but we can do them. She called me afterwards, and we did them. But we can.
Cool.
But I do have some questions about the form itself that that confused me.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Well, why don't you go with your questions, and then, if you wouldn't mind, we'll do those last couple of steps, and then we'll have the whole process so that, you opened some really good spaces and questions yesterday, and it'll be a nice archive to have for people to use in the future to listen and get a deeper insight, and your questions will help to build that insight for people. So go for any questions you've got.
Okay. So it's more with the wording. I mean, it's apparent that you and I think differently, which everybody does. So
Sure.
6A? 6A. So if
Right.
that's where we ended, right? We finished 5B, I think. Right? Didn't we finish 5 yesterday?
Yeah, well, we had just gotten into 5, yes, and read through it.
Okay.
The invitation to that super processor.
Yeah. Climb toward heel, restore me to a newborn essence love. All right.
Yeah, so the idea there, recognizing in Aramaic, there's this, literally, we're not left on our own to process with our own sort of pea brain type of thing, but rather there's this, what we might call a super processor in us that was called in Aramaic Ruka Tekudja. And the definition of that down at the bottom of the page is she who undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth, a feminine elemental force. And what I'm doing is I'm giving permission. I'm stepping into another level of willingness in several arenas by each request that I make of her. I want support and healing. I want to be restored to love. And that's the idea, is it's asking for assistance from that power that resides within us that literally can process us right down to our genetic toes, so to speak.
Yeah, I
Okay.
understood that. I understand that.
Good.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the form. So I just etched out, because it makes no sense to me, when I read 6A, I now feel, and I didn't really come up with a feeling yesterday, and then B, I understand. I now feel resolved. Is that what that's about, that question?
Well, it's actually a little more. I would think that your answer for 6A, I now feel, and it is actually more of a thought than a feeling, but I think resolved would probably fit more in 6A.
So what I'm doing is I'm getting at my end result, not the end result, but what am I experiencing after I've released from 5? Correct?
I've canceled.
Okay.
I've canceled the goal. I've asked that power to go to work in me. What's going on for me? And I would hear the word resolved as maybe being something like relieved or released from or complete with what happened.
Relaxed. Yeah, it was relaxed.
Okay.
It wasn't where I would want to go. Like, I think there's more to be had there, more to be released there, but that's where I was at. So, and this is what confused me. The wording,
Okay.
B about number 1, C that you're just talking about Bill, the person in number 1, right?
Well, no, actually, if it were just Bill, I'd be saying number 1C, but really it's looking at the whole circumstance in number 1. In number 1, I had a construct in my mind. I had a perception that my mind had constructed, and that was that Bill's the problem, and he doesn't honor me, doesn't listen to me, and I feel and I want to punish her. So it's looking at the whole thing. Now, when I look back at number 1, what's my overall perceptual construct about that situation?
So it's situational. It's not about the person. Yeah. It's the whole thing. Okay.
It's the whole thing. What's my overall perception that I laid out. I mean, I broke my perceptual construct down in number one to several different components, but now feeling relief or whatever it was I'm feeling, what's my perception now? When I look at that whole conversation with Bill and that whole disturbance I had, what's my thought? What do I now perceive about that?
Yeah, so that for me would be that it's not my fault. It's not my fault that I didn't do anything wrong, because that was my MO. I didn't do anything wrong. And I can leave Bill off the hook because it's not up to Bill to listen to me.
Yeah, Bill's going to do what Bill's going to do, and now I've resolved the internal trauma that was resonating by that situation in me. And so, and I'll tell you that over the years, and I've been doing this for almost 40 years with people, so I've guided a lot of people through worksheets, and the most common response that I've gotten over the years from people when they get to this stage 6B is like, what's the big deal? Once I've dropped into that dissociated part of my mind, accessed the energy that was the root of the pain, and I let go of it, I now look at it and it's like, what was the big deal anyway? It wasn't a big deal. It was, well, I held all that unresolved energy, but now having forgiven that energy, having removed that energy, it really isn't, it isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So
perfect.
See, I asked to be shown a time when I had not fulfilled 3. When I had not fulfilled my goal, my desire. Is that what 3 is all about?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, the early part of the worksheet is focused on, you look at step 4. I want to really bring in an aspect of created human essence, which is love. I want to bring love into the space. There's another aspect of being that can assist in healing too. In fact, there's a whole religious tradition that's based in it, and that's the Buddhist tradition is based in compassion. And so what I'm looking at, I held the goal for Bill in number 3 that I identified. And here in number 6C, I'm looking for a time when I didn't fulfill that goal, either for myself or someone else, where I brushed somebody off, didn't listen to them, or ignored them, or didn't value them, or whatever the dynamics are. I just want to look at a time if I've ever done that. And if I have, then by making note of it, the tendency is to step into a place of, well, golly, here I was expecting them to be perfect, and I certainly haven't been perfect in that arena. And that tends to open a space of compassion that still creates an additional layer and level of healing.
Got it. Okay.
Around that issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And 7, the principle of the universe is that by giving, I first get the original. I understand that. I am grateful for this opportunity to hear and choose truth. And I where you say perfect love, I just put awareness in because that makes more sense to me.
Perfect. Well, let me fill in. Let me fill in a little blank there for your sake and for the recording's sake, so anybody who listens in the future. So, one, I mean, there's been a lot of research done on gratitude, and when I can step into appreciation for something, it creates a whole different level. Again, takes things to a different level of healing. So, when I tap in, when I realize, gee, I had this pain, this trauma about not being worthy or not being listened to, I've resolved that. Bill's actually been my support in doing that. It's kind of like a backhanded compliment, but if Bill had never done that, I'd still be carrying this energy around inside of me that I've just forgiven. So I can step into gratitude for that. And then when I move into the idea of I'm reinforcing what I stated in number 2, I'm going for truth. Whatever happens in my life, I'm going for truth. And then perfect love, when we do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, we talk about 2 filters in the human mind. One of them was called RACMA. It's in the frontal lobes of the brain over intentions. And basically what it does, there's 3 qualities of intentions we can hold. We can hold intentions keyed to love. We can hold intentions keyed to fear. We can hold intentions keyed to hostility. And when Rachma, and it's a word that was used in Aramaic when they said to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, you know, you've been teaching us all this law. What's most important? What comes first? And in Aramaic, the word law means basically how it works. And he didn't say, as the Greeks translate, he didn't say, love your neighbor, love God as yourself. It's not what was said at all. What he said was, have Rachma when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, and by so doing, you maintain self. And Rachma is this filter in the frontal lobes that literally inhibits anything in the frontal lobes based in hostility or fear, and only allows activity keyed to love, and is a gateway for that human life, that presence of love, to come through into our human form. And then there's a corollary filter, and that's in the back of the brain over perception, and that was called Kuba in Aramaic. And Rachma and Kuba set together, and what Kuba does, it's a similar function in the over perception to Rachma over intentions. So intentions in the frontal lobes, perception in the back of the brain, and again, perception can have energetic patterns of hostility, fear, or again, things keyed to love. So when Kuba is set, then, and you know, these are words, I mean, the concept doesn't even exist in English, so it's something totally new to most people. When Kuba is set, the units of perceptual memory that are used to build our perceptual constructs are now keyed to love instead of hostility or fear. It tends to move us out of threat and irritation back to love. And those two filters together were called perfect love in Aramaic. So when you hear the phrase, perfect love casts out fear, that's what they were talking about. When that's active in the mind can't produce a fear-based perception. It doesn't matter what we're facing, doesn't matter how terrible or disastrous or horrible the situation is, a person who has Rachma and Kuba, perfect love set, stands as a rock on love and can bring love to a situation that otherwise people who are in hostility or fear just go berserk and get lost in their hostility and fear. Does that make sense?
What does Rachma mean again? Is that intention?
So Rachma is a filter over the frontal lobes of the brain.
What does it mean? What's the word? Not the filter part, but just the word. Is that, you said something about intention?
The definition of Rachma in Aramaic would be a filter over intentions.
A filter
and a gateway. Dual part.
Okay.
Filter and a gateway. If hostility and fear are active in the human mind, you don't find any human life there. The active presence of love is gone. That gateway, when open, allows love to be present in that mind. So Rachma is the filter and the gateway that brings love into the human form, literally being into the human form. It empowers us to have a human life, and it only allows intentions in the frontal lobes of the brain that are keyed to love to be active. So if there's an inclination toward hostility and fear, and you know, the three qualities of intentions keyed to love bring forward intentions that are loving. Intentions keyed to fear bring forward intentions that are negative. Intentions keyed to love are intentions that are destructive. So if I find myself in a destructive or a negative situation, I know that I've lost Rachma. When I enter the practice, and one of the ways of doing that is just to breathe, and as you breathe, bring the awareness of the breath right up the front of the face into the frontal lobes of the brain. It tends to activate that filter and move me out of the negative or destructive into intentions and the presence of active love. And the reason that's important is because intentions are the raw material of goals. And remember, yesterday we talked about the drivers. Goals are the drivers for perception. You know, there are people who talk about, they write about the power of intention. There's no power in intention. One of my favorite statements about intentions are that an intention can no more move a muscle than a shadow can carry a stone. It looks like
I
it's
agree.
there.
I don't like the word.
Yeah. Well, it's an
Yeah.
important word because when my intentions are on track, my raw materials, it's like if I'm going to build a house and I know I'm going to live in that house for the next 100 years, am I going to go out and get the very best materials I can, or am I going to, substitute second best, third best, fourth best materials? Well, when Rockman is active, I've got the best raw materials for building my goals, which ultimately are going to drive and create the perceptions that really I function from and create my behavior. So it's about getting the best quality of intentions you can, raw materials, so that you build really solid goals based in love. And then when you load those into the mind, that pulls forward, out of all the quadrillions of bits of information in our structure and in our genes, that pulls out the stuff that's linked and keyed to love. And it's always going to give us the highest and best perception to guide us toward really, truly functioning as human beings.
Yeah. All right.
And so that's the idea of perfect love there. They're the brain cells behind the idea of perfect love on the worksheet. But I think your connotation of it was perfect. It's right in line. Just that's a little more information in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm now addressing Bill in this case, number 1C, based on number 3. So now I'm going to go back. I'm thinking about Bill, and I'm thinking about my goal for him to listen to me. And then using that as the basis of my next step. And so it would sound like, Bill, based on me wanting you to listen to me, from love, I'm going to structure a goal toward you, and I'm going to offer you this behavior based on this goal. So I'm formulating a new goal toward Bill. If I was in hostility or fear in the past, I might have wanted to, as you said yesterday, punch Bill in the face. But if I get it correctly, if you go back and think about Bill and that whole circumstance, probably the hostility that would have you wanting to punch him in the face is totally dissipated. Would that be accurate? And it's not totally dissipated.
It was too disjointed yesterday between stopping the call with you and doing it with Susan and hearing all the words that we're explaining to get to that place. So I'd have to do it all over to get there.
But right now, it's the next day now. If you think about that situation with Bill not listening to you, is there any inclination in you to want to punch him in the face?
A little.
Okay, but okay, that's great. That's great.
Run out of the room and not ever talk to him again.
Okay, so that's a whole lot different than punching him in the face or wanting to punch him in the face. And if you go back to Yeshua, they said to him, "How many of these damn worksheets do we have to do anyway? Is 7 enough?" That's what Peter says to him. And in Aramaic, the Greeks translate that Yeshua said back, "No, you'll do 7 times 70." In Aramaic, it was actually 77 times 70 times. So you may go back and do more worksheets around Bill and this hostility thing, and you might find, we've been talking about the power person, you might find some power person dynamics. I'd ask the question, was there somebody in your life that you, if they didn't actually do it, that you at least perceived wanted to maybe punch you or somebody else in the face?
You're asking me if I didn't perceive somebody wanting to punch me in the face?
Yeah. Was there anybody, with yourself as a kid, was there a power person around that perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So continuing to work on this will, you've moved that from wanting to punch him in the face to, okay, well, I'm ready to get out of the room. I don't want anything to do with him. But here's my offering. If you clean this one up totally within your structure and within your genes, you will likely come to the place where you can look at Bill with total, complete compassion, embrace him in love, and ask, Bill, what's going on for you that you would degrade somebody by not being willing to even listen to them? and that you could be the space of active love that would support his process and his healing, because you've totally cleaned out all the complexities in your mind that went into creating that perception originally when we started of wanting to punch him in the face. And the idea of forgiveness, I may go back and do repeated processes. I may do it, and I may do 10 worksheets in the next week around Bill if I were you, and there, see, I'm finished with it. And then a year from now, somebody comes in, triggers that whole complex again, and I'm at a whole new level of vitality and aliveness, and I can touch into a whole new depth of what needs to be healed for me and my whole bloodline around this thing of not being valued or not being listened to. So there may be many layers of that to go through. The thing to get is I can see that, if on a scale of 1 to 10, my punishment thought was a big 10 yesterday, well, maybe it's a 5 today that I want to run out of the room and have nothing to do with them again. When you're finished with it, it'll be 0, just plain 0. And you may choose to ignore Bill, or you may choose to step forward as love and compassion and appreciation for what he's shown you about yourself and offer him the same support as he gave you in kind of a backward way. That's the kind of shift that happens with you. If you listen to Yeshua, he says you'll come to the point where you will be the space of love for those who hate you. You will do good to those who despitefully use you. And when you clean up the mind and literally that created human essence love fully incarnates within your physiology, it really doesn't matter what people do. You can stand in that space of love, in that space of compassion, and embrace even the craziest behaviors in the world, because what the world needs is people who can do that. It doesn't need people who smash somebody or run away from somebody. It needs people who can stand in that space. We need a critical mass of people who can be the presence of love for all this insanity that's going on in our world to be healed. And we're working with these tools to make them available on a global scale to create a team that literally changes the world.
I hear you.
Well, I'm glad you're part of the team.
Well, thanks.
Delightful. Delightful to play with you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well, so then the final step is that I create a goal based in love toward Bill, something I'm going to actually do.
Okay.
And so what might that goal be at this point? And that might be the trigger for your next worksheet. So if you were standing totally, if Rhea was standing totally in a space of comfort and peace and absolute presence of love, looking at someone like Bill who's kind of functioning out of a pretty small, dismissive mind, what kind of a goal could you see based in that love offering to him?
Just acceptance.
Okay, perfect. Then that would be your goal in number 7. That would be the completion of the worksheet, except for one step, and that is the little box on the right-hand side. You'll see says, draw your feelings now. And, of course, sometimes feelings are pre-verbal, and these may be verbal, what you're feeling as you're doing this, or if not, it can be good to do a line drawing. And we actually skipped over that part yesterday up in number 1, where you draw your emotions. And so now what's moving in your structure. And then this is kind of like the pièce de résistance, the finish point, and that is, I commit to love, to living a human life. Check boxes there are just like, yeah, I'm willing to do that. To help achieve this, I do a mass canceling of all the times that I wanted number 3 from someone. And then there's a line that says initials. And so I want to look at all the times in my life when I wanted, and it might have been mom, and it might have been dad, it might have been that first boyfriend or girlfriend, it might have been a spouse, it might have been a child. You just put the initials of everyone you've ever held that goal for, and they've not fulfilled it for you. And you just kind of you've opened the space, you do a mass canceling of that goal from all of time for anybody to listen to you. And that, again, opens a still wider space for the true presence of love, of being, to enter your form and into every aspect of your life.
Okay. All right.
And that's forgiveness in the first century Aramaic context.
This is all on your website, I assume.
It is, and yeah, and actually last Friday's workshop, or pardon me, last Friday's radio show, if you go to the archives, we did the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop in our intensive on codependence, and Jeannie took the audio file, and that's the archive from last Friday. She played it last Friday. We were tied up, but we couldn't do the show. So you might want to go back and listen to that last Friday's show. And Jeannie, if I know her, she's probably already put the link for it into the notes today. But that kind of gives the whole, it's a fairly quick workshop, but the whole Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop kind of lays the whole thing out. And so you might find that useful to take advantage of. And then in our special archives, if you go into whyagain, whyagain.org, our website, up in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button that says Start Here, very tippy top of the page. If you click that, it'll take you into a page, and our conversation will be one of the radio shows that will be there when we're complete, because we keep a record of all the shows where we've walked somebody through a worksheet. And there are at least 20 of them where either Dr. Tim or Jeannie or myself have walked somebody through the whole step-by-step process. And, each worksheet is unique. Each person's questions, each person's situation are unique. So each of those are very instructive. And so if you want to go back and get more insight, you can go back and listen to those as well. And then, of course, we're always here 5 days a week to even the slightest question that you've got. We're here to do the best we can to answer it and support.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Sweet.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, anything else on your mind? Any other thoughts or questions?
No, not right now. I have enough to chew on. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll join you in the chewing process. That's awesome. Thank you, Ria.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Blessings.